My children recently had a situation, and something came up doctrinally that I think is really important to address. They had a situation in which they were being taken advantage of, and for a long time now, they've been taken advantage of by a person who's been put in authority over them. This would include, by the way, bosses, landlords, etc. And they have had this situation. I'm not going to share it because it's not my situation to share, but they've had this situation in which this person has not been taking care of the responsibilities that they have to them, and even to the extent that they've put them and their family in danger. And they've continually gone back to God without, before making any decisions or any responses, and they've done what God has told them to do and learned what he's told them to learn, even when they were not exercising their rights here on earth. So they've continued to do that, and I know this situation because this is what God has also done with me. He's done it with contractors that were cheating me and stuff like that, where I wanted to discontinue the contract, and he told me give him a little longer. Because the bottom line is we have to be used by God. Just because we have rights here in the world that the world tells us we have, doesn't mean that it's the same rules that God goes by. And most of the time it's not. And so sometimes he wants us to be used in order to give that person an opportunity. Sometimes, and even at the same time, he's teaching us something like humility, like, setting aside our rights in order for the sake of righteousness. There are, and this is what we need to be submitted to all the time. But it got to a point where it was not really clear that God was actually telling them to do something, but that they were trying to figure out why, do we need to keep turning the other cheek and allowing this person to put us and our children in danger. And I could see that there was some confusion about what is God expecting from us, and that confusion was coming from a misunderstanding of doctrine. So what I mean by this, and there's a couple things that I want to say before I say it. Number one is I'm not going to contradict Scripture. I'm going to use Scripture in order to interpret what Jesus was saying, in order to understand what he was saying. I'm going to use the entirety of Scripture, not just a one-liner. Secondly, don't let this be a stumbling block to you. Don't let what I'm about to say be a stumbling block to excuse you from obeying turn the other cheek when you need to turn the other cheek. You need to go back and you need to discern these things with God all the time. You cannot treat this like a box to be checked and decide for yourself in what situation you want to turn the other cheek and in what situation you want to defend. You need to be moved by God. And so when I had this discussion with my children, they didn't just say, okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and do this. They went back and discerned it with God and made sure that what they were doing was in line with where he was moving them, not with something that I was telling them to do, or somehow giving him my human permission to go and do, because I'm nothing. Within the word, it is clear that Jesus turned the other cheek. It's clear that he went like a lamb to slaughter. It's clear that when he was slapped, he didn't slap back. But it's also clear that when he was slapped, he said, if I spoke incorrectly, if I said something incorrect, tell me what it is. But if I didn't, why did you strike me? It's also clear that when Paul was being flogged, that he defended himself and he said, is it legal for you to be flogging a Roman citizen? It is clear that Jesus did not just keep quiet, but that when the Pharisees were wrong, that he spoke up and that he said, you're in error, and that he corrected them and that he spoke the truth. So this idea that Christianity is supposed to be some sort of a form of worldly doormat Christianity is a lie. These ideas about love and tolerance and meekness and gentleness being submissiveness to man is wrong. It's wrong. You do submit to the authorities, provided that they are not requiring you to do something that is in opposition to God. You do that. You submit yourselves, but you also are allowed to defend yourselves, and you are supposed to defend the truth, guys. So that if someone is putting you in a bad situation, you need to go take that up with God, and you need to ask him, am I allowed to defend myself in this situation, and how? How would you like me to do that? And that when people are speaking incorrectly, you don't spare their feelings for the sake of falsehood. Speak up. Speak the truth. Don't be afraid of people who have the spirit of the devil and interpret your boldness to speak the truth and to defend God over man. Don't be afraid of people who condemn you for that, who say that you don't have a spirit of gentleness and meekness. That's according to their own understanding. You don't have to live by that definition. You hear the way I speak. Would you define me to be some worldly definition of love and tolerance and gentleness and meekness? No, you wouldn't. But then when you look at the example of Jesus and you look at what God has said about meekness and gentleness of spirit and love and truth, you see that he was bold and that Paul was bold and that they didn't back down from the truth because of some counterfeit definition of counterfeit Christianity. In the Proverbs, we're told that we are not to judge with partiality. We don't show favor to anybody but God. We stand for truth. And you are allowed to stand for truth when you're being mistreated. You are allowed to do that. But you need to discern each situation with God. If he tells you to turn the other cheek, if he tells you to wait a little while longer, if he tells you to do whatever it is he tells you to do, that's what you listen to. You don't go by your own understanding. Please discern this message with God.